Peace. It's good. Peter Brown, CEO of the Ledge Group. So I wanted to, just take a quick minute and do something of a level set that I think is missing. One of the things that really was kind of imparted to me by my parents was the ability to articulate a given thought. Um, and so most commonly what I try to do is not inject my opinion into the narrative, but inject those things that are true yet not spoken commonly. And without them being spoken, without them being clearly defined, what happens is we come up with potential solutions to our common problems, but they always miss the mark because we've not clearly identified the question. Okay. So I'm going to go through a couple of different things. I'm going to speak to a couple of different things. Okay. First and foremost, that is most striking to me as a truth is that in human history, in all of human history, we do not find any people on the planet Earth 100% dependent upon another people for their survival. There is no demonstration of a people in that condition for any extended period of time. And furthermore, for those people to not only be completely dependent for their food, clothing, shelter, water, healthcare, security, sanitation, and services, in addition to being dependent upon another people for that, it is the same people that produce the condition to begin with. And we are dependent and we sit in this space. Now, quick conversation simply because the sister asked me to speak on it. And so I will briefly. Um, so MK Ultra, Mind Control Ultra, which was produced by way of the CIA. And there were many different twists and turns to it. And there's many different facets to it. A component of Operation Paperclip brought the top 85 percentile of the Nazi scientists into the United States of America. Joseph Mengele happened to be one. And there happened to be a lawsuit where he's listed, and it's public record in Canada, where they were doing these experiments. And as time goes forward, and maybe it won't be spoken of so frequently, but there were so many people that were MK Ultra victims that, again, people don't know. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, he's actually the only person that I have ever heard of in history that volunteered for the MK Ultra. Yeah, he volunteered for it. Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma bomber. Um, Very likely, I can't say with certainty, but I'm pretty confident Charles Manson. We know Huey P. Newton. We know Eldridge Cleaver. We know Jim Jones. There's great suspicion O.J. Simpson. Um, there's been many victims. Vacaville was a huge place where they were hitting people off. So there was a Ron Karenga, right? It was huge at a time. But what happens is that people look at the MK Ultra experiments and they look at it in a silo, and they consider it being an individual programming effort, and that's not at all what it was. MK Ultra was not specifically designed to control the individual. It was designed to be able to control the masses, right? It's a population control experiment. It was not an experiment on the individual. Certainly, those who were affected, or those who were victims to the MK Ultra, in some cases, depending on their age and when it happened and the duration, became very usable, where others were just thrown off. Like Brother Huey, he was just, he never came. When he came back out of Vacaville, he was never the same. His speech patterns, everything was completely different. Um, he wasn't turned into a subversive. He wasn't turned into a tool, but he was definitely hit off. Um, So it affected different people in different ways. But the goal, again, was not individual. It was not really about the individual. Certainly the Project Monarch, right? Certainly some of these other projects that spun from it found individual application, right? Where they were very useful. Um, so you see the individual application, but that was not the primary goal. The primary focus was to produce a means of installing triggers into humans, accessing and controlling the behavior of populations. That was the real goal. And so how they did it, again, they used, and again, all of this is visible. You can go see it. It's all declassified. They used sexual trauma therapy. They used light aversion. They used sensory deprivation. They used LSD. They used physical trauma. They used sleep deprivation. They used all of these different things to produce a dissociative personality disorder within the host. And what that would do is it would cause that host to segment or compartmentalize the different components of their being designed to deal with a different stimulus. The way that this is most easily recognized is when a child is hurt, when a child is molested. There are those cases or those times where the child will develop a disassociated personality in order to be able to deal with that trauma. So, and this allows them to defense mechanism. The mind does it, and it happens below the threshold. This is a subconscious reaction in many of these cases. And so, what the MK Ultra did was it brought humans to that place and then programmed responses, programmed trigger responses through repetitive phrase, through different methods of suggestion. They programmed trigger response. They could predict the way that an individual would react to a given stimulus. This is based on them having produced or um, promoted a trauma. Okay. And so, again, this worked very well. And it gave them great control, gave them great insight. Again, Jim Jones, the drugs that they found on that compound were completely consistent with that. That was formerly a CIA testing lab where they did this exact same type of work. So what we find is that the MK Ultra experiments were not simply designed to control the one. It was designed to control the masses. And so today in America, what we find is if you go to any really, you don't have to go far. What you will find is you've got generations and generations of people who have all been traumatized, whether that be sexually, verbally, physically. You have an entire series of generations, and in fact, if you don't omit your own families, you're going back 400 years of trauma, right? Transgenerational trauma that has occurred. And so you have a people that are already traumatized, right? You have a people that are already traumatized. Now, introduce fluoride and various drugs into the water systems, and what you have is a docile and malleable population. You have a population that is prepared for suggestion and the installation of triggers that can be accessed. And so I go through all of this illustration to speak through it to MK Ultra to say what? All right. Why do I mention MK Ultra? Because I suggest to you right now, you're seeing in the U.S. elections, you're seeing them telling you that the Russians are interfering with the election on behalf of Bernie Sanders so that he can get elected so that Donald Trump can win. Are you catching all of that? They are interfering in the election on behalf of Bernie Sanders so that he can be the nominee so that Donald Trump can win and he will be in office for another 4 years. This is what they're doing, right? And so at this point, the United States of America can't stop it, right? Why can't they stop it? The reason that they can't stop it is because it's not attack. It's not an offensive move. All the Russians are doing is infiltrating the programming that the United States of America put on their own people, right? All they have to do, all Russia has to do is put a meme out that has a black woman yelling at in a cartoon a black man or a black child or some rather defined opinion in that meme, and they put that out and share it, and guess what happens? We rip through our community. We shred each other. We almost can't wait. We're looking. Look around you. Look around you. We're looking for the opportunity to find this content and assault each other with it. And you don't even know who's producing it. You don't even know who's producing it. I'm telling you, what's happening is all over the world, all over the world, they recognize these triggers that have been installed, and they're referencing them, and they're using them. And so what we're doing is we're spending time being reactionary. And so what happens is you see some news on the idiot box, and it's Dwayne Wayne, what's his name? Dwayne Wade, whatever. Um, you see Snoop, you see Oprah, you see all of these people and all of this media, and each and every single one of us runs out to share our opinion, what we think. We go and profile ourselves for free, right? And we go tell the world what we think about these people and these things. And it's completely predictable behavior. I mean, I could sit in my house, produce a small video presenting some facts about someone that you didn't know and really don't need to. And I can count on the masses of the population sharing that, weighing in, saying what they feel, saying what their opinion is. All of these different things about someone who doesn't know you and their lives have no bearing on yours. And so, again, it was a real roundabout way to kind of speak about the MK Ultra and the programming and the triggering that's happening to you on a daily basis. They're triggering you for no reason, right? They can put random facts up. They can throw up a chicken sandwich against Popeyes against Chick-fil-A, and what do? You respond. And so, what I suggest to you, this is not just specific to you. Everyone in this entire society has fallen victim to this programming, to this MK Ultra. But let's talk about those who began, those from among us who began to try to do something, to try to make a difference in this dynamic for us all, right? So a lot of people probably don't know this, but Clarence Thomas, when he was in college, Clarence Thomas used to walk around his campus in Black Panther gear. Clarence Thomas used to quote Malcolm X. He walked around in Panther gear. He was serious back then. And then he became a part of the system. He got a job. You know, people wanted to overcome. They wanted freedom, and they got jobs instead. They got a salary. They gave a salary to this one and that one and the other one, and they forgot about freedom, and they stopped talking about it for a paycheck. Well, I suggest to you what has happened here today is that the majority of your thought leaders, the majority of these people that are being promoted and that you're seeing most commonly, what happened was they began with a righteous energy. They began because they wanted to actually make a difference. And if you listen to the majority of them, they're brilliant, right? These brothers are brilliant. It's true. But what happens is, in order to get heard, in order to get an audience, right? In order to get enough people. So what happens is people around them hear them and they say, you know what, you should be heard. Your message should be heard, right? Everybody should hear you. And so they agree. And so they go and they set about using all of the tools associated with social media, and they use a common model, right? They use the Facebook algorithms. They use keywords and tags, and they use these different methods by which to reach the largest possible audience, right? They say things and you'll never hear me. Man, look, you'll never hear me say, and don't forget to subscribe. Yeah, you know what that is. Let me tell you what happens, okay? What happens is they get so caught in the machine required for them to be so vocal and so promoted. They get so caught in that, and so not only do they get caught in that, but they are they are fueling their forward progress by way of your money, right? So they get to this place and they start to write books, and they need to sell these books in order to be able to do their thing, right? You see them, right? They're traveling around and they're doing all these things, but they don't have jobs, right? They're not paying for this. You are, right? Through the books, through subscribe here, through all that, right? You're paying for it. My people are paying for it, okay? And so as time goes on, they realize that it's really lucrative, right? That it's really lucrative. That so like the doctor in the medical profession, there's no money in healing you, right? There's no money in healing you. So what you find is you don't hear any of them speak to a permanent solution. You don't hear any of them speak the word freedom. Why? Because they got a paycheck. You understand? Because freedom is no longer defined the same way since they got a paycheck. Since they got money, freedom has a different definition for them. So they don't say it. In fact, if you were to ask most of these speakers, they'll tell you that they were already free, right? They'll say that they were already free. But if they were correct, then that would mean when Martin Luther King had a dream and he quoted their own words where he said, "Let freedom ring from every mountaintop and hamlet," then he must have been wrong. When Malcolm spoke of freedom, he must have been wrong. If these people that you're listening to today are correct, then Martin was wrong, Malcolm was wrong, Huey was wrong, Marcus was wrong, Frederick Douglass was wrong. Each of these people had the word freedom on their lips. Furthermore, 400 years, that is 20 generations in your family and mine, 20 generations. That's 1,048,576 parents and grandparents in your family. And the one thing that we can consistently say without any question, the one word that was on each and every single human being's lips was the word freedom. Freedom. But you don't hear them speak this word. Why don't they speak this word? Let's look at it. One of them is talking about putting all of their eggs into the basket called reparations. Reparations is better defined as a U.S. stimulus package because, again, if they give you reparations, first of all of your food, clothing, shelter, water, healthcare, security, sanitation, and services come from them. So in time, eventually, every dime you get will go back to them, right? This is just basic, okay? Basic economics. Furthermore, your children now will be rubber stamped with a stamp that says paid in full. You will find the hostility in this nation will increase, not decrease, because you got a paycheck. That does not in any way, shape, or form diminish the fact that there are 65,000 missing black women in America today and 1.5 million missing black men in America today. That won't, your little reparations check Doesn't do anything about that. Doesn't do anything about the fact that you're going to send your children to school and they're going to learn there's 100 genders. It does nothing about the fact that you have absolutely no control over any element of the essentials relative to your survival into tomorrow. None. You have no control. You will send your children off to school, and in 5 years, they will come back unrecognizable to you or anyone in your lineage. And you have no control. And so you have these peacocks that tell you that reparations are the answer. Well, your parents pay for you to be born, and your children will pay for you to die. And every second, every event, every act in your life has been monetized. When you learn how to walk, the economy or the system in which you exist makes $1. You buy some shoes and some socks. When you learn to ride a bike, when you go to school, when you get a teacher, when you graduate from primary school and move onward, again, each and every single interval, they're getting paid. Every breath you take. See, your parents are paying for your insurance, right? You're paying for so many different things. There are so many different things being paid for, you don't even notice it. But every second of your life has been monetized. Is this just us? Is this just black folk? No. If the words that I'm saying to you right now are true, then they will apply equally to everyone. If they're not true, right? If those things that I'm saying to you right now are true for us, but they are not true for another man, then by default, you cannot call that thing true. True is a static value. Okay, it must withstand 360 degrees of scrutiny and be true in every degree. For if it fails to be true in any, then it must be called false. So if the things that I'm saying are true for us, they must be true for everyone, right? They must be true for everyone. So I suggest that when we talk reparations, again, it is more accurately defined as the U.S. stimulus package because every dime will go back to the United States of America, and she will enjoy that. Your parents paid for you to be born, and your children will pay for you to die, and every second in between has been monetized. And every generation behind you, their lives, without them even being born, has been monetized. They have determined the likely number of children that you will produce, the socioeconomic status that you will enjoy, the educational level that your children will likely attain, the amount of money that they will generate over a lifetime that this system can extract from them. This was always a based system, always was. So now you've got some of the leaders that are talking about wealth, and they want to sell you their books and their seminars. And they're going to give you 40% off so that you can watch their seminars as it relates to how to generate wealth. Well, guess what? If you generate wealth in an economy where you neither print the money nor control the interest rate, you did not generate wealth for you, but you generated wealth for the economy under which you exist. So what you've done, essentially, is just make the system stronger against your own children. So they will not be able to overcome it, just like you were not able to overcome it. You will simply work and spin your wheels. And there is no two ways about it. It's not my thinking. This is not my opinion. This is what it is, right? This is exactly what it is. If you build a house with your bare hands in this nation, you build a house with your bare hands. And in a generation or two, if you do not pay the taxes on that property, if your children fail to pay the taxes on that property, it will be lost to you. Every time you add on to your property, when you put on a new kitchen or a new bathroom, your tax rate increases. You got to pay more for what you just freaking built. And you don't think you're being pimped, huh? You don't think this is slavery, huh? So no matter what you gain, Dr. Dre had $1 billion. At this point, he has, and hey, Dre, man, I hope you don't see the video and I'm all in your pocket. Shit. So as as the news has reported, right? He had $1 billion. Now he got 800 million. Where did it go? He will spend every single dime for food, clothing, shelter, water, healthcare, security, sanitation, and services. Every dime will be spent. And maybe he'll live his entire life and not spend all that money. But guess what happens? His children or whoever he leaves it to, it's still being diminished until every single dime goes back to the system that prints and produces the money. This isn't rocket science. You're born in a casino. They produce the chips, and you're sitting in there thinking somehow you're going to be able to win. You're going to be able to get ahead using their chips. So you got this talker that's telling you that wealth is what you need to do. Wealth is where you need to focus, right? The generation of wealth. Madam C.J. Walker's house was sold a few years ago, and the seller was not named Walker. Does that tell you something? Does that tell you something? Right? The seller was not named Walker. So you have others that are telling you that getting an education is the key, right? Getting an education. The fact is, you are still in a position where you are dependent for absolutely everything that you need in order to be able to exist for 48 hours on a nation and people that do not recognize your humanity. Think of that. They don't recognize your humanity, right? And you're dependent on them. And your forward plan is to continue to count on them to provide you, your loved ones, food, clothing, shelter, water, healthcare, security, and sanitation and services. Your plan is to count on them for those things so that you can get an education from their system so that you can do what? What? How do you win? Where's the win? Where's the W in that equation? How do you win with that? Right? You've failed to define what is the goal. Right? You failed to define what is the goal. If the goal ain't freedom, you tell me what it is. It's comfortability while in servitude. Is it to make slavery more comfortable? To get a gentler, kinder master? What is your goal? Huh? You ask your leaders, you ask these talkers, what is the goal to what they're saying? Right? Any organization that's been around for 50 years, they're paying their taxes, and the government, if they wanted them dead, they would have been dead. They're a part of it. They are a part of it. They've been around 50 years, and they're still not talking about freedom. They're still not talking about a permanent solution. But they charging you to come in and listen to them, and they real nice, pomp and circumstance, but there's no solution, no permanent solution. Yeah, there's a definite problem. And I've had, there's those people that I really liked, and I followed, and guess what? When they heard me say these things about them being booksellers, and I wasn't personalizing. What I was saying was that these people are making a living on telling you how shitty your life is. They're making a living on it. They're not, this is just like a Tim Wise. This is a vulture. I'm sorry. I'm going to call it like I see it, man. And if I'm wrong, put it in the comments. Bring them. Bring all of your doctors, Dr. Seuss, Dr. all of them. Bring them. Bring them. Show them this. Show them this. If I'm wrong, hey, I'll say I'm wrong. But your booksellers, they're paying their taxes. They're comfortable. Hidden Crayons 54, he's paying his taxes. He don't want to be free. He won't say freedom. Right? He won't say freedom. So my feeling is, again, if you take no hand in producing the food, clothing, shelter, water, healthcare, and security for yourself, look, this is my house. Right? This is my house. This is my, I don't know if I can see that thermostat on the wall? I pay for that. If you were staying in my house and you touch that damn thermostat, what is your major malfunction? I pay for that heat, right? So you have no voice. You come into my house, you're going to take the heat the way it is, or you get the fuck out. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Right? So in my house, you have no control over what it is that I prepare for dinner. You have no control over the temperature that I have, the pictures that I have on my wall. You have no control. You have no control. Your only option is to get out and build your own, right? So here we are standing in America. You don't control your own food, clothing, shelter, water, healthcare, security, sanitation, or services, and yet you're standing there in America complaining about the way that they provide that food, clothing, shelter, water, healthcare, security, and sanitation services, but you take no hand in controlling them for yourself. I suggest to you, and you've heard me say it, you've heard others say it. I'm just quoting somebody. I don't know. It was a famous dude, but I think the man said, "Eat the cake, Annie Mae. Eat the cake." If you ain't going to do it for yourself, and you are planning to be dependent upon somebody else to provide those things for you, eat the cake. Eat the cake. Don't complain about the heat. Don't complain about what's on the dinner table, about the GMO foods. Don't complain about the fluoridated water and the birth control and the gynecomastia where you're growing breasts. Don't complain about that, because you ain't taking a hand to do it yourself, right? You're not taking a hand to do it for yourself, so someone else is carrying your weight. You're being sunned, and you're comfortable being sunned, and your leaders are making you comfortable being sunned. Hey, eat the cake. You hear me? So if you are not willing to eat the cake, if you're not willing to be sunned, if your forward plan is not to count on your historic enemy to carry you and your family and your loved ones, then it is incumbent upon you to do something. What are you going to do? You're going to go whine to him? Oh, you did this to me. You did this to us. Oh, poor us. Wait a second. You know, if you look at Mount Rushmore, Mount Rushmore has 4 racists, 2 human traffickers, 1 child molester, and a rapist carved in soaring stone for the whole world to see. You think they don't know what the hell they did? And you standing there still saying, you did this to me, poor me. The fact is, Royals, it's not poor you. It's victorious you. You've come through it. Your people came through it. You existed and endured through the most heinous chapters in human history, and you are still here today. It's not poor me. It's simply a perspective shift. It's not a matter of having someone pity you enough to make a change for you. When you really realize, when you really define what it is that traps you in state, you realize that there is nothing to ask anybody. You know, I learned a long time ago, just because a person is your enemy doesn't mean everything that they're saying is a lie. Doesn't mean everything that they're saying is a lie. Listen to them that don't like you. Listen to what they say about you. Does it fit? If you try that hat on, does it fit? And if it does fit, how do you change it? How do you change it? Can you ask somebody? Can you garner enough pity? You walk around whining, you did this to me, oh, you don't like me. You get the Home Alone face because somebody don't like you. You know, you got the, man, I'm looking at these pages, man, and they're jerking you. The Atlanta Black Star, that paper, that thing that goes on Facebook, I see them jerking you. I see them keeping you professional victims. Always whining. Oh, they said they don't like us. They said they don't like us. Build your own or shut up. Build your own or stop whining. That's what you sound like. Whiners and victims. Either build your own or shut up and eat the cake. It's, you know, again, there was a time, once upon a time, I was so very angry. And I was very angry at them. And I can't say that that was wrong. They have done horrible things to my family, right? But the only reason that one could get angry if they get bit by a rattlesnake is because they didn't recognize the nature of that serpent. That's what he does. That's what that snake does. He's supposed to bite you, right? It's your fault for not recognizing his nature. So I ain't mad at that rattlesnake no more. I'm not. I'm mad at my own that perpetuate this thinking that the best we can do is depend on somebody else to solve our problems. Let's talk about the vote, right? And the candidates. You got candidate Booty Judge, right? You got Brandon Brown. You got President Buttigieg about to take place, right? And you've got so many black people that are saying that our people died for the right to vote. First of all, let me dispel that illusion. Nobody died for the right to vote. They are here. You see, our people were either indigenous here. On my mother's side, she was indigenous, right? Her DNA says Han Chinese, the people that produced the Native American, not a tribe. We made the tribe. There would be no tribes without us, right? Okay. So, but secondarily, on my father's side, they came here as a result of human trafficking. Human trafficking. Innocent human beings brought here by way of trafficking. Okay. So when you place it into perspective, you realize that none of this was produced for you. You didn't have any share of this. The Bill of Rights, you didn't have none. Constitution was written by child molesters. None of this is built for you. So now you look at this 2020 primary season, and you look at these candidates, and you're picking and choosing what you like to call the lesser of two evils. But these are not lessers of two evils. These are just degrees of bad. And not one of them have on their agendas not one of the words that Martin Luther King said. So his birthday just passed, and they held up a really big, huge poster of Martin Luther King. We love him. He's awesome. But what about the words that man said? What about he said? Huh? What about disparity in housing? Huh? What about equal access to financial instruments and lending? What about equal access to affordable health care without bias? What about equal access to quality education without bias? What about equal access to due process under the law without bias? Where did these things go? If they were not true then and they are not true now, how the fuck you voting for somebody that ain't mentioning those things? How does that happen? And then in your mind, you think that, like the Reaganomics, that the trickle-down theory would work. If we can perhaps moralize or humanize this nation, it will serve to trickle down and have an effect for us and our children in our lives. But what is that effect that we're talking about? A better and gentler, kinder master? Is that the effect? Is that all that we're good for? Is that all we can do? All you can do is resign to the idea that it is normal that your children for the next 20 generations will beg their children for jobs. That's normal in your mind, huh? They have no problem with that. They have absolutely no problem with that. That means that every bit of energy that your children spend will be spent making their children more solvent. So they have no problem with that. Nah, Bernie Sanders ain't gonna mention that. Huh? Elizabeth Warren ain't gonna mention that. Right? Buttigieg ain't gonna speak to that. Right? None of them will say these things. Furthermore, they will speak so highly of Martin Luther King. But again, the man died saying, relaying a dream of freedom ringing. And so if he was speaking a dream of freedom and then he got murdered and nothing happened between then and now to produce that freedom, that means that there is one people in the American society today that do not maintain the freedom for which they paid more than any other people in this nation. Ours paid the passage for the Irish, the Italian, the Hungarian, the Lithuanian, the Eastern European, the Jewish. Each and every one of these groups came in poor, tired, huddled masses with nothing but the shirts on their backs. And they came in and they found accommodation. They found food. They found a nation that was able to give them safe harbor. And they never asked how that happened. They never considered how that happened. What was the economy? What was the vehicle? What was it that paid their passage? And that was our blood. Our blood. That was breeding every single 13-year-old girl for 275 years until that girl could no longer reproduce. For 275 years without skipping one single innocent little girl. And so, those that tell you to vote, which one of these nominees speaks freedom? Let's spin it a little bit. When the colonists did not have their freedom, To what extent were they willing to go in order to gain their freedom from England? What did they do? When we look all over the world at other peoples and other populations, what did they do absent their freedoms? What did they do? How did they respond? Right? And here we sit docile, and you got this one telling you to vote. You got this one telling you wealth generations. You got that one telling you reparations. You got this one telling you education. And none of them have a permanent solution. I'm telling you, freedom. You can't ask for it, and it cannot be given to you. We build it. Again, I'm Peter Brown. This is the Ledge Group.